Hi everybody! In today's video I'm going to show you how you can do a set of gel nails on a nail biter. Doing a set of gel nails on a nail biter can be a struggle. I find it so hard myself because of course the base isn't perfect and you really want your client to have perfect nails afterwards. So let me share my tips and tricks from what I've learned and for the things I still struggle with. Maybe you have some tips for me. Please comment down below because some things I still can figure out. Let's dive into one of the biggest problems with nail biter nails right away. Because the nail bed is so short, most of the nails have this little lump of finger around the nail beds, and that can make it quite tricky. Let me come back to that later. First, let's prep the nails. I always use a cuticle remover. A cuticle remover really helps you to soften up the cuticle area. Any dead tissue that's on the nail plate you can scrape off using a cuticle pusher. I know there are nail technicians that say you should never use metal on the natural nail plate, but I tried using wooden nail sticks, but for me that didn't really work. So I really prefer this method, but always use a very gentle touch. You do not need to work very hard because the cuticle remover will do the job for you. And if you really see how much of the dead tissue you will still get off, it's pretty nasty, but it's also very satisfying. And know that that's tissue that else will be on the nail plate, and it will cause a barrier between the nail plate and the product, create lifting. And especially with nail biters, lifting or any imperfections can be so tempting to start getting the nails off. At least that's what this person tells me. When she has a little bit of lifting, she starts biting again, and the whole thing becomes a disaster, to be honest. So you will see me use a lot more prep steps than you're used from me, because I really want to make sure that there's nothing on the nail plate that can cause any lifting. Are done removing the dead tissue from the cuticle area, then you can rinse the hands with water and soap. Make sure you remove all the cuticle remover from the nails, because if there's still some product on there, it can cause lifting, but it can also continue to soften up the cuticle area, which can cause allergies, but also the nail products to get into the cuticle area. That's not something you want. When you're done with that, then you can file, and I prefer using a 180 grit file to really smooth out the surface. Use a very light touch. You don't want to damage the nail. You just really want to buff it and to create a very, very soft, I can call it scratch, to make sure that the product really sticks onto the nail plate. Because the nail plate itself, as you can see, it's still a bit shiny. And that's why C&D calls it remove the shine in their steps, because it's not about really filing the nail plate. It's really about removing the shine, because the shine means it's not suited for the product to adhere to. When you're done with that, you can use a nail cleanser to remove all the oils and dusts from the nail plate. Really scrub it to make sure that there's nothing left on there. Now let's apply a pH bond. This is also called a dehydrator sometimes, and it creates the right pH bond, of course, for applying your nail product. And what will happen, it will become wet at first, and then it will start to dry out the entire nail plate. So you want it to look even drier after application. That's what you want to see. Now I'm going to apply the forms, and maybe you can see already that the nail beds have very different shapes, so I'm not going to use the same forms on every nail. In the past I was really insecure about that. Could you do that? And I think if you really want to do stiletto nails and you really need to create equal length, then you should go with the same forms, but on a short nail then it's no problem at all, as long as if they are not really different. This one is pretty square, and as you can see I can snug it right up there and it fits perfectly, very easy to apply. Whoops, there it went. loose she did it. So I got a bit angry because she pins too much curve in it. There was a, there you can see it, a hole in it, but you can just use a tool to get it in the right shape again. So now for the other, the pinky, I'm going to use a basic golden form. This is a very affordable one. I think this one is, no, I don't think this one is from AliExpress, but I do think that you can buy the same one on AliExpress. Very affordable, very good for basic nails, especially if you don't need to apply a lot of length. So, and here you can again see how tricky it can be to really fit that form under the nail bed, because you have to work around the shape. So sometimes I even cut the form a bit, because of course I can't file down some of the nails even further, but they're not the right shape. So I prefer using this method than really use my file to create even more damage to the nail, make them shorter, because you will really get into the flesh. So of course I could ask her to just bite them down more evenly, but I don't think that's the challenge I should give her. She would gladly accept it, I think. It would give her an excuse to bite. But let's go for pretty nails this time. So there you can see how that fits way better. So yeah, that's really nice. So now let's go to our thumb. And this is really, really interesting. The thumb is way more round than the others. So sometimes it's really fascinating how in the same hand you are using different forms, and with tips that's way trickier, I feel, because sometimes with tips you also can have the experience, hey, this shape isn't really right for this curve, but you can't adjust it, of course. Now let's go to another tricky part of doing nails on a nail biter. This nail, as you can see, is pretty long. The nail bed is pretty long on the nail. There is even a little French smile line, so that's good. With this finger, there is much more flesh above the nail bed, and that makes it harder to create a very sharp C-curve. So the C-curve will be a little bit more flat, and a flat nail always looks a bit more lumpy. I feel narrow nails or with a more intense C-curve, that looks more natural, because when your nail grow out you also have this more C-curve most of the time, and they'll look more narrow. So that's something to keep in mind, and that's the challenge doing a set of nails the first time on a nail biter, because you really have to work around that, like I said. What I personally really like about the golden forms is that they're pretty thin. I know some people prefer them thicker, but especially with gels, I feel that a thin form gives you the best way to shape it. Maybe with acrylics, because you're really patting it and putting more pressure on the form, the thickness can be helpful. But with gel you don't need to, you really flow the product on there. And I really like using the golden forms if possible. And they're the cheapest I own, so that's a great thing as well. Here you can see the Young Nails Concealer Pink. This jar is almost empty, but I have another jar at hand, so I can use that one as well. Here you can see it. So that really shows how much I like this product, doing nails. And with this person, I tried so many products, but this Young Nails gel worked the best. I'm applying another coat of pH bond, just to make sure there's nothing on there anymore, because when you apply the forms, sometimes you might touch the nail plate and some of the oils of your hand, of your own fingers, might transfer to the nail plate. So just to make sure, I'm applying another coat. And now I'm going in with the Protein Bond by Young Nails. It's their own primer. It's a very sticky primer. And I saw some videos of Young Nails where they say you can also apply 2 coats of it, but I experienced more lifting when applying 2 coats. So maybe that's just me, but I prefer using a pH bond first and then this primer. I can also highly recommend the primer from IBD, the Gel Bonder primer. That one is really good as well, but now let's stick to the system to make sure no lifting occurs. And like I said, I tried poly gels, acrylics, a lot of other products with this client. Nothing really worked as good as the Young Nails. And I think that's where sometimes a high-end gel product or nail product really shows where you pay for, that there are certain ingredients maybe that can adhere better to the nail plate. While I have another person where I do nails for, and her nails are so easy. I can apply anything and it will stay easily 4 to 6 weeks. So I will have a video with her nails of dip powder with a nail tip coming up soon. I will let you know. Now it's time to apply the gel. Young Nails does have a base gel, but I never use that. And what my store told me is that the base gel is basically a thin clear gel that some people prefer to put first, but she said you could just sculpt right away, just like with acrylics. So that's what I'm going to do, and I've never experienced any problems. Some people prefer to use this gel as a base layer first, but I find it a bit too thick for that. So the reason I'm starting with the ring finger right now is because I scooped out too much. This really happens all the time to me when I'm doing nails on a nail biter, because of course you're used to create a certain scoop for a certain nail, but the nail biter nails are still pretty short and we keep them pretty short. The reason why I'm doing so is that the nails grow out very fast, and also if the nails are too long, then she will bump into everything, create more lifting or cracks or chips, and then she won't have as much fun of it. As when I put them on a little bit shorter, they will grow out super fast, so she will have longer nails very soon. The only problem if you do short sculpted nails is that they might look a bit thicker than when you are creating longer nails, because of course when the nails are longer, the nail beds are longer, but also the free edge, then there is just more length to it and it won't seem as thick. And when the nails are pretty short, but you still have to create an arch, so you have to create a thicker point in the middle of the nail bed, and you always can check out where you have to put it by pressing the nail, and where it turns white, that's where you want your arch to go. With a nail biter it's not that hard because there's not much space to create your arch. And I also learned that if you have a nail, you can build the extension about 2/3 of the nail bed. And I know that's not really true because I saw so many videos and nails from people that are super long, especially stiletto nails, but I always question the strength. But then your C-curve is super important. So if the nail beds are a bit shorter and you want to keep them very long, then you need a really good C-curve. Then with gel you can't really pinch it. I know there are pinching gels. I looked into it by NDED, but NDED has some trouble with their deliveries, so I'm really a bit hesitant to order. I did some videos on NDED and I got so many messages from people that waited for their orders, so I really hope that they solve their problems. If you have any updates on that, please let me know. This is not a gel I usually pinch, and then there's the trouble of using this gel on a nail biter. Because of the nail and the finger shape, you have a lot of finger above the nail bed. Pinching is almost impossible because the nails are short and there's skin underneath it. So there's no way you can pinch it any rounder. Again, if you will do them longer, then you could pinch them a bit more, giving them more strength and a more narrow look. And then the thickness won't really, you won't really notice it. But yeah, that's really up to people. Some people prefer doing them a bit longer so they look great right away. But I did one set of long nails on her and she bumped into everything, so it didn't work for her. And that's why it's so important to always do this little intake when you're doing nails for the first time on someone, to really find out how much do they use their hands. Are they doing a job maybe that require a lot of lifting? And if you do the intake, you really know which products to use, the length, the shape, to make sure that you create beautiful nails that will last long and also fit the lifestyle of the person you're working on. The sculpting itself is pretty easy. As you can see, we are going for a more square look this time. And most of the time I manage to do it in just one scoop. Sometimes I have to put on a little bit more on there, and that's the beauty of this gel from Young Nails. It is self-leveling because, as you can see, you won't see where I add something more. It will just blend in beautifully, but still it will stay where you put it. And I think this is a magical combination because mostly you will get either one. So if you want it to be self-leveling, it will be very runny, start running into the sidewalls. While if you want it to be very thick and stay where you put it, it will get really lumpy and you really have to file down a lot. With Young Nails, you won't have any of these problems. And this is also something I really noticed. Young Nails is not the most affordable gel on the market, but I do feel you get a really good quality. So it's definitely worth the price. I prefer using it on problem nails because on regular nails I can manage to work with the cheaper one. So maybe gels from AliExpress, polygels, acrylics from NDED, but nothing compares, no gel compares in my experience than the Young Nails. Now let's take a look at this nail. This one is pretty wide and it's also a bit tapered towards the free edge. As you can see, when I sculpt it, it is very hard to create a narrow free edge. I couldn't create a sharper C-curve with the form because of the finger that is underneath the form itself. So there's really no way to get it this short, but still a bit thinner, a bit more narrow. I tried once using cuticle sticks, so these are round guideline sticks, I think you can call it like that. You put it under the form, create a C-curve, and then you put the form against the nail bed. But if the nail bed is this wide, you can't really use a very small C-curve stick because it just won't match and you will have a lot of gel that will fall off, and you will get a gap between the nail and the free edge. So I'm really curious if you have a solution for me. How can I make that short nail? Because of course when adding length it will look totally different, but how can I make a short sculpted nail look very narrow? And of course I can file in the arch. You can really leave a bit of a higher arch in the middle that will also create more of a narrow effect, but you can't do that too much because it will look very thick and that won't do it any good as well. Now I notice this form is a bit too wide, so I used a dotting tool to press it in a bit more after applying the gel, so that's not very smart of me. But that's a way that when you already applied the gel, and of course before curing, you can adjust the C-curve a bit more. This nail is less tapered and it even has a little free edge. The C-curve isn't that strong, but I do feel that you can create a more narrow looking nail when you can work on a nail that is already growing above the finger. The reason why you see me rotate, by the way, is when I'm done sculpting one nail, I will let her put her hand into the light and then I'll start doing another nail on the other hand. This way you can work really fast and you're also sure that everything is cured perfectly. Sometimes I hear people say something about over curing it, that if you cure the product too long, that won't be a good thing either. I have no experience with that, but it sounds a little weird to me because of course when you're outside there's also UV light around you, so that would mean that your nails would still be overexposed to UV rays. So I'm not sure, and that's also the reason of course why you can't keep your gels into the sunlight, because if you leave your brush with a bit gel into the sun it will start to cure. So like I said, overexposure I have no experience with. Of course, when you are rotating the hands, make sure that the last nail is cured for the recommended time. I am using 48 watts lamps from the Sun 7, and on the other side of the table I have the battery charge from AliExpress, and those curing times I think are about 60 seconds to 90 seconds, and I always make sure that the last layer is a bit longer, so I'm really sure that the last nail is perfectly cured as well. Everything is cured, I remove all the forms. I got a message last week from someone asking me if my forms leave any residue on the nails, like glue residue. I have no problems with these forms. I did have some forms in the past, and sometimes when you really dehydrated the nails and the fingers, then that can also create a little bit more glue residue, but you can simply remove it using some cleanser. Now I use the cleanser to remove the sticky layer that always occurs after curing the gel. I sculpted the nails thin as possible, so I'm going to use a hand file, not an e-file, because I really want to be very gentle, more buffing than really filing it. It's pretty self-leveling, so I really want to make sure that they're as sharp as possible and that they look even. But I don't want to remove a lot of product. Again, with nail biters, because of the flesh bump above the nail bed, you sometimes have the problem when you start to file that you will file too much of it because you want them to look thinner. And then, oops, there you go, you went straight through the nail. So I learned from that, and I really be careful what to file. Now I'm going to top coat it because I'm going to add a design that she doesn't want to keep on the entire nail length. So she doesn't want to keep them on for like 2 to 3 weeks. So first I apply the Love Carry top coat. It's a really good top coat, by the way. I can highly recommend it. It's super shiny. It lasts so long. It actually replaced my gelish top coat, which I used all the time, but I really feel that this one gives me more shine, and it doesn't have the blue hue to it that I feel the gelish one has. You can also see that when you put the gelish one into the light, you will see the blue on your nails. So I'm not sure what that is, but it will also affect your gel polish colors, so that's something to keep in mind. This one doesn't affect the colors at all. Now for the design I'm going to use a holographic nail polish from Creatrice, the Spectra Light. It's really gorgeous. It's purple. You won't really see the purple. It's more like the holographic effect, and I'm going to use a sponge to apply the glitters. Using a sponge when applying nail polish glitter is always a good idea because the sponge will soak up all of the nail polish and the glitters remain, giving you a more intense glitter effect. I'm using the sponge to create more of an ombre, and this way I can also do it in one coat, so that's very easy. After I apply the glitters on all the fingers, then I will use a top coat to seal it off, and if she wants to remove the design, she can always just use a nail polish remover to remove it and apply something else if she wants to. We really decided to go a bit nude because when we are applying glitters or rhinestones, if it looks a bit off, she will start messing with it and she will damage her nails. So we keep it nice and clean, nice and simple, really give her nails a chance to grow out. And there we go, the final result. What do you think? I know, they're not perfect again, but I never managed to do so with a nail biter. I must say, I do prefer the nude option, so without the glitters, because for me it almost feels like the glitters give an accent to the nail-free edge and make them look a bit wider. So I'm really curious how you feel about that, with or without the glitters. If you have any questions for me, please comment down below. If you have any tips for me, please comment down below. I'd really like to learn from you. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.